so this is today's sutra. We're on 327. All right. And so, you know, if this is the first time you've been to an Iyengar class, so we always start, well, at least with my seasoned students, not so much with beginners, but with our intermediates and advanced students, we always start with the invocation to Patanjali. So it's a way of grounding ourselves. It's a way of connecting to the lineage over the course of hundreds and thousands of years. It's a way of connecting with the global community of practitioners. And the lineage that has emerged from Patanjali. If you ask PYS Iyengar, what kind of yoga does he practice? He doesn't say Iyengar yoga. He never said Iyengar yoga. His students coined that term because they were trying to, you know, describe or attribute what they were learning. But he never called it Iyengar yoga. He called it Patanjali yoga, or he called it Ashtanga yoga. And Ashtanga now in the contemporary cultural context refers to the Mysore style that Pattabhi Jois taught. But Ashtanga yoga, classically, it just means 8 limbs. Ashta, 8, anga, limbs. So Burl, if you want to grab a mat, and maybe you could come to the end here. And so, so then Patanjali left us with 3 major treatises, 3 major books. And his third and ultimate book was the Yoga Sutras. His first book was on speech, actually, on grammar and speech. And then the second book on Ayurveda is considered like the father of Ayurveda. And then the third, so it's how we communicate, how we relate to each other through our words, and then bringing health to the body, Ayurveda, and everything we know about food and herbs and all of that. And then the consciousness, yoga for the consciousness. So in our culture, contemporary culture, Western culture, we think of yoga as for the body and for fitness. But classically speaking, yoga is for the consciousness. Now, from an Iyengar perspective, we work through the body. You know, so we're working through the body to access the consciousness. But anyway, so the Yoga Sutras have a little bit of about asana, very little, and it's mostly really about consciousness and about the esoteric practice, spiritual practice of yoga. So this one, we're getting into the Vibhuti. So this chapter is called, the third chapter is called Vibhuti Pada, and we're getting into what's called the Vibhutis, or the cities, which are the powers that are attributed to the practice of yoga. And they're given with a grain of salt. You know, they say, okay, they describe the powers, they list them all out. And they say, but don't pay any heed to them, ignore them, don't be motivated by them. These things may happen, these things may develop through your practice, but that's not the reason to practice. This is just taking you toward the ultimate goal, which is, what is the ultimate goal? Kaivalya. Kaivalya is the 4th chapter. Kaivalya is liberation, total freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the cycles of life and death. I mean, it's referring to reincarnation, but even if you only believe in one incarnation, it's the cycles of suffering and rebirth, liberation from that endless cycle of suffering, and liberation to a higher plane of consciousness. So anyway, that's where we're going. That's where we're all going together. All right. And so today's sutra, Bhuvana Dhyanam Surya Samyumat. So Bhuvana Dhyanam, knowledge of the worlds. It's a kind of a cool concept. And then Surya, you may have heard that word, Surya Namaskar. You know, that's something that that a lot of people know about. Surya Namaskar, sun salutes. Surya is the sun. And then Samyama. So that's also a word that we've come across many times. Samyama refers to the last of the 3 limbs. So you've got the Ashtanga, the 8 limbs, Ashtanga yoga, and the last three are Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. And so Samyama refers to the last of those three limbs. Dharana, focus and concentration. Dhyana, meditations. Samadhi, total absorption, total union. So the translation that BKS Iyengar gives is, you don't have your hand up.
Yeah.
But the translation that BKS Iyengar gives is actually really interesting and different. And I think that this is what characterizes the BKS Iyengar's particular approach. So he says, by samyama on the sun, the yogi will have knowledge of the 7 worlds and of the 7 cosmic centers in the body. He's referring to the chakras. Now, all of the other translations that I looked at, no one else mentions the body. No one else mentions the chakras. The literal translation is in Samyama on the sun, knowledge of the entire solar system, insight about the universe, knowledge of the universe, knowledge of the entire solar system, knowledge of the world. But nobody else mentions the body. And so I think really this is key to understanding BKS Iyengar's methodology, as he really saw that the body is a microcosm of the universe, and that when we are working in a very concrete way through our own body, that's how we access this universal knowledge. That's how we access the cosmic knowledge. It's not through abstraction. It's not by thinking. From BKS Iyengar's point of view, it's not about thinking about it. It's not about meditating on it. It's about working through the body. It so happens I wore my chakra t-shirt today from India. And so we have the 7 chakras here. You can't see all of them because I have my shirt tucked in. But, and so he was connecting. So classically speaking also, the different planets are associated with particular chakras. And so the knowledge of the planets, the knowledge of the universe via the planets is already kind of embedded in the body through the chakra system. And so this is like really, really old, ancient teachings, right? And so I think that this is really key, that the way we gain knowledge of the universe, the 7 worlds, he says, which is kind of cool because he uses the word worlds instead of planets. So it kind of implies that maybe there's much more beyond our own planetary system. That by samyama on the sun, just the sun, the yogi will have knowledge of the 7 worlds and of the 7 cosmic centers in the body. Let's see what some of the commentary says. So Guruji says, as the sun illumines the world with its rays, so the light of the soul reaches the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled chakra, also known as Brahmakapala. The yogi knows the functions of both the outer and the inner worlds. So, this, I feel like astrology and Jyotish astrology is Indian astrology. I feel like it's kind of become more mainstream in the past decade or so, and everybody has like that shiny necklace app on their phone. I don't know about you, but I feel like it's become more mainstream. I remember when Nancy Reagan in the 80s was consulting with an astrologer. Everybody thought that was completely wacko. And I feel like now it's a little bit more understood that here is a source of knowledge, here's a source of wisdom that we can tap into, whatever our religion or belief system may be. And so from an Indian, South Asian point of view, the Jyotish astrology and the practice of yoga, the knowledge of the practice of Ayurveda, all of this is very much intertwined. It's really, it's all one fabric. And so this idea, so as Guruji says, the yogi knows the functions of both the outer and the inner worlds. Then he goes into detail about Indian philosophy, 14 worlds, divisions of the universe. But then he says, as the microcosm represents the macrocosm, the human body, it epitomizes the entire structure of the great universe. The 14 worlds are represented in the various regions of the body, from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet. And then he goes on to more detail. But yeah, this idea of microcosm, macrocosm, our body epitomizing the entire structure of the universe. I feel like that's really why yoga is important. And so, you know, when we talk about how important it is for us and our communities, and our families and our neighborhoods, for us to practice yoga, I don't mean it in a theoretical way. I mean it in a very concrete way, that through our own practice of yoga, through our own shaping of our own microcosm of the body and the mind, we are impacting the people around us, the world around us, our relationships, our communities. And so I think this is really, really profound. And I would love to hear your thoughts. So if you want to unmute yourself, or people here in this room, if you have any thoughts you want to share, reflections about this sutra, I'd love to hear them. Or questions.
It kind of makes all the detail that Iyengar brings to yoga have more significance, because they're working on a tiny part of your body that you didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
Which is so much of what we do. If that, you know, has a macrocosmic meaning of some sort, that, you know, working through the tiny thing is part of working through bigger things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not at all random.
Yeah.
It's not at all random. It's very intentional. It's very much chosen. It's always for reasons. And so yeah, it's interesting, Beryl, when, like, so for instance, if the teacher gives an instruction in the foot, but then you feel something in your abdomen, or you feel something in your shoulder, you know, then it's if we bring that knowledge, that recognition that it's all part of the macrocosm, then we start to understand the relationships and how the webbing starts to become more apparent to us. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I love this, like bringing in the astrology piece, because so the first teacher I went really deep with was really into Iyengar yoga practice, but never became certified. He kind of grew up in and came up in Kriya yoga, like Goswami Kriyananda was his sort of teacher and guru, who's so into astrology and describes the chakra system, and sort of all of our, like our chart is really like a map to our karmic, like to our samskaras, which made me interested in astrology more. It's like, oh, it's not something out there. It's actually a way to understand what our like habit patterns and predispositions are. And then my teacher found Iyengar yoga and was like, oh, this is the way to actually like embody and work with this stuff. Like not just to know the map, but to like do something with it to bring balance. But I've never looked at this sutra and made the connection about astrology in that way. And it makes me think about community in the way that, like, so we all have like specific challenges and things to heal and things to rebalance, and like we all have a different astrological map. Like some of us have a lot of air in our chart, and then others, you know. And so I used to think the goal was sort of like to neutralize that, to somehow like neutralize all the predispositions. And now I'm realizing, like, no, we don't, it's not really about that, which would be almost maybe conformity, but rather like, how do we work with our unique skills and talents and become aware of where we're challenged so that we can do what we are each here to do. And then if we all do that, like then there will be the whole piece. But like all of us don't need to do all the things, but if we can each really hone in on like what is our work and our skills, and then we're like each doing that, I feel like,
Yes.
oh, then something bigger could change.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then,
If each of us, go ahead.
oh, but sorry, just,
No, go ahead.
and how yoga really shows that can really be a tool, I think, for that, for like discerning like what is my path and what is like my thing to heal and rebalance so that I can bring kind of like the unique thing that I can bring. Like especially Iyengar yoga is so subjective and customizable. Like we're all doing the same pose, but we're each doing something different in each pose. And it's like that maybe with our life too. Like we're working on different things, but the work is unified, or like, you know, yeah, I don't know. I'm having some like peace about Sangha, I guess.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. And I really appreciate you bringing up the samskaras. So the samskaras are kind of latent habits, or subconscious habits, the bumps at the bottom of the pond is how PYS Iyengar describes them. And so, yeah, and the chart as a reflection of our samskaras. And then maybe we can connect that each asana is a reflection of our samskaras on some level. And so it's an opportunity to overcome those habits, those things, those obstacles, those patterns that have been holding us back. Yeah, anyone else? Okay, let's chant this one, okay? It's a nice short one. You know, I like the short ones, right? Because they're easy to memorize. So I'll chant it once, and then we'll chant it 3 times in unison. All right, so go ahead and mute yourself. Bhuvana Jnanam Surya Samyamat. Bhuvana Jnanam Surya Samyamat in unison. Bhuvana Jnanam Surya Samyamat. One more time. Bhuvana Jnanam Surya Samyamat. Okay,